Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week we're talking about Season 1, Episode 11, with hosts Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, and musical guest Neil Sedaka. The show originally aired on January 24th, 1976. Brad, this is our first show with co-hosts.
It is. And to help us, we have a co-host ourselves. From the Saturday Night Live Hall of Fame podcast, co-host Thomas Sena. Thomas, welcome.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. Long-time listener. I finally get to be on the pod.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are both huge fans of your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do this with us. This is exciting for us. Welcome.
Yeah, it's fun. Thank you. And it's exciting for me. And I have to point out that, so on the SNL Hall of Fame podcast, this season, so the three prior episodes actually to this Peter Cook and Dudley Moore episode were Candace Bergen, Elliot Gould, and Buck Henry. So all of whom are SNL Hall of Fame candidates that we covered on the podcast this season. So it's fitting then that I'm doing the Peter Cook and Dudley Moore episode and not any of those, which honestly, it's a nice, like, I watched those other, I watched Candy and Elliot Gould and Buck Henry. I was ready for something a little different. So this is good.
This is definitely different, I think.
Speaking of the SNL Hall of Fame, Thomas, could you tell us when will Neil Sedaka be getting nominated?
Jamie and I are in discussions about that. If he was I would totally vouch for Neil if he appeared more than once. So that's part of the criteria. But being that as it is, I'm not sure that we'll get to him. But spoiler alert, I might actually be on board with Mr. Sedaka.
Okay, hold on. I've got to erase about half of my notes. Give me a minute here.
We
Sorry.
have tension here.
Oh, this show was different, though, especially from the last few that you just mentioned, Thomas, because here we have a comedy duo, a British comedy duo, right? So they even reference this in their monologue, how their humor might be a little different than American audiences are used to, and definitely different than what we've seen so far in the show.
And right off the bat, like you said, also our first foreign hosts on SNL.
Right. So Cook and Moore are an established comedy duo at this point. They'd been together for about 15 years or more already, and they had a television show in Britain for years. And they were just kind of making their footprint in the U.S. at this point in the mid-'70s, I think. Thomas, are you familiar with Cook and Moore?
The only way I was familiar with Peter Cook was from The Princess Bride. When he did the marriage like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
That was Peter Cook?
I remember seeing that was, you didn't know that?
I did not know that.
I see the look in your eyes like you're genuinely
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Isn't it exciting when he gets that look? It's adorable.
We just blew Brad's
I'm
mind. That's the
blown.
only way that I knew who Peter Cook was. Of course, Dudley Moore from Arthur. Probably the Dudley Moore vehicle that I watched the most was with him and Kirk Cameron. Was it like Father Like Son? Was that the Body
That's
Switch
right.
movie that he was in? Yeah.
I had Santa
I was
Claus
a child
the
of
movie,
the late,
but that's even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a child of the late 80s and early 90s and grew up watching HBO, and that movie was always on. So Dudley Moore, as far as I'm concerned, is like one of the pioneers of body switch movies. With he and Judge Reinhold were like on the ground floor of these body switch movies that were prominent in the late 80s. So needless to say, longtime Peter Cook and Dudley Moore fans. And I had no idea they were a comedy duo.
Yeah.
Before I watched this episode.
Oh, really? Okay, so
Yeah.
you didn't, before watching this, you weren't aware of them either.
No.
Oh, that's awesome.
No.
So then what did you think of them when you saw them?
I thought they had great chemistry, so I think it was obvious that they had been performing by this point at least 15 years or so together. So I thought they had wonderful chemistry. They played off each other really well. Maybe in some cases a little too much chemistry. Maybe the cast got shut out a little much, but we'll get to that. But I think as a duo, they brought a lot to the table.
Yeah, I agree. I was a little bit bummed in that aspect where you talk about, every time we saw them as a duo, they were just redoing old bits. It was like a greatest hits routine. I would have loved to have seen more of the two of them with the cast. And I wasn't even familiar with a lot of their stuff, but you could just tell this was their stuff, very Lily Tomlin-esque, where it's like, I've got my material, I'm going to bring it in, we're going to showcase. And then the only time they really worked with the cast was as solos, which was a bit of a bummer. And I was also a little bit, it's funny, I couldn't help but keep thinking, the whole idea when Lorne started the show was, a variety comedy show showing all these different types of comedy. So this is his chance to showcase the English humor, British humor. And you got to feel like he really wanted Monty Python and couldn't get anybody from Python because like you said, Gary, Cook and Moore had been around for a while at this point. Right. It's not like they were necessarily that hip. And a lot of the routines they were doing were 10, 12 years old. So not that it took that much away, but it did kind of feel like, okay, we couldn't get Monty Python. Who can we get? Who's next up? And they had just recently finished a Broadway run of their material, a lot of the stuff they recreate here. So it kind of made sense to get them on. Yeah. But I just couldn't pull away of like, oh, it would have been great to see, Eric Idle.
That's funny. That didn't even cross my mind in this because I guess I just had a different perspective because I knew that they were like so established. I kind of took it as like, oh, he's bringing in an established act, but I didn't even think of Python. So that's an interesting point.
Lorne was a Python fan back then. So I think that's a good point, Brad. I mean, he probably had it on his mind that he wanted to bring one of them in, which he would. Looking down ahead, early in season 2, we get our first Python guy appearing on SNL.
And I think this is really the last big appearance of Cook and Moore together. This is really at the end of their run as a duo. I guess, Peter Cook was having a lot of drinking problems by this point, and Dudley Moore was, I think, on the cusp or getting ready to try to start his Hollywood run. So they're kind of at that point where their run's done. This is almost like their swan song. I think they may have done like, I don't know, Dick Cavett or Merv Griffin or a couple of random appearances after this, but I think this is really the last big high-profile appearance of the two of these guys.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which is cool, which is really cool for SNL.
Yeah. Do we have any more we want to cover on Cook and Moore?
No, but now we should do a good solid 20 on Neil Sedaka, please.
Don't dare me.
Oh my God.
Thomas, I love this. No, I've been getting angry texts from Brad about Neil Sedaka as if I chose him as the musical guest for this show.
Why would you do this?
Kind of. Yeah. Yeah. So the fact that you're on board with Neil Sedaka totally makes this for me. I love it.
I didn't think I would be. I'm just as surprised as Brad might be.
Yeah. I think we can just get right into the show now. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right. So the cold open.
George Coe.
That was my first note.
Right?
George Coe with an exclamation point.
I had 3.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so George Coe and Gilda are on stage with Garrett, who's dressed as a policeman, and you realize that they are in the basement or something of the home of George and Gilda, and they're calling in the bomb squad. And here comes Chevy to defuse the bomb. I thought it was funny. The first thing that made me laugh really was when Gilda starts talking as they're walking up the stairs, and he goes, "Get them up the stairs!" Like he shows how tense he is as the bomb diffuser.
That was great timing. That's actually, I wrote a note that was shades of what I like about Chevy in movies in the 80s. Just that, like, him snapping at the drop of a hat and going into manic Chevy mode. That's the Chevy that I like. So that was great when he yelled, "Get him out of here."
The first thing that made me laugh is he's wearing a catcher's vest.
Yes, he is. He's wearing a catcher's chest protector and like rubber rain boots and a winter cap.
Listen, this sketch is so stupid, and I loved it. It was great. It was hilarious.
I thought it was great. And, like he walks over with the string and then he walks back and trips over his bag, and just the way he catches himself over top of the box. I thought it was great.
That was like a pratfall fake out right there. So we didn't get the full Chevy pratfall that we've seen across the season. It was a little bit of a fake out or a false start.
So to that point, and my one more is like, this all leads up to nothing. And it literally is nothing because the gag doesn't work. He goes and he puts the bomb on top of a box and he takes the lid off. And what happens is a hand, and it's John Belushi's hand, but a hand comes up with a cream pie and supposed to smash him in the face and misses.
Yeah.
And he just stands there and kind of looks to camera and then gives his line. But I feel like if he would have gotten hit, he would have oversold it and like backflipped or something and actually did a fall. I think, no?
I could see him doing that. But I don't know, because it didn't look like he made a move as if he was going to do anything more.
That's true. Didn't throw him off that much.
Yeah, knowing Chevy, I think if he was supposed to do that, he might have done it anyway.
Yeah.
Just to sell it. And he maybe in his mind it would have been funnier if it was obvious that he sold something that didn't quite work.
And I'll give him credit, as much as we talked about last week, how like I don't like Chevy. But you know what he's really good at? Making things work when there's a mistake. Like whether it's a bad joke or like a flub or something like this. Like he's really good at like not really breaking and just selling it and keeping it funny. And I thought he did a great job in this.
And that's a small theme throughout the episode.
Yeah.
I think that does come up again.
Yes, it does.
I think as far as cold opens go, I think this worked. It wasn't like the most brilliant premise or anything, but I think just to start the show, I think it works as a cold open. I don't think I would have liked it placed anywhere else in the show. But I think specifically just as kind of a warm-up little sketch, this worked exactly where it was.
Yeah. And I liked that
totally.
It wasn't a pratfall this week, that it was something different.
So to that point, if you're not doing a fall, why did this have to be Chevy? Wouldn't Dan be great in the sketch if you're not doing it for a fall?
Yeah, I think Dan would have been great, but the live from New York is Chevy's thing.
I
right?
know, but like that was my last note was if you're not doing a fall, this could have been anybody, and why not give somebody else in the cast a chance?
Was Chevy involved more in the writing process than Dan? Just kind of overall, it seems like he was more of a hands-on writer. So I imagine this maybe was Chevy's brainchild. So why would Chevy want to choose somebody else?
No, that's a good point. And at this point, he's
Chevy's ego.
Yeah, there's the Chevy ego part of it has come in, and especially in these middle episodes where like he started to get that notoriety and he's become the star. Like, very good point. He's not going to give that up.
But I agree with you. It would have been good to see something. I think Danny would have been really good in that.
Especially as a bomb tech, it just screams Dan Aykroyd.
It does. It really does. So every week I think, we don't have anything to say about the credits. And every week I find something or Brad finds something. And this week, Don Pardo read off everyone's name for the first time.
Did he read off George Coe?
He did not.
No, wasn't even mentioned.
Yeah.
They did not mention George Coe.
You know what? We put together at the SNL Hall of Fame a video montage, but it was Don Pardo or Daryl Hammond saying the name of every cast member in the show's history. And at the end of the video, we had to apologize to George Coe because I couldn't find any audio of anybody saying his name.
Well, there actually is audio at the end. They do mention him at the end credits. Okay. They say his name.
I looked in the wrong spot.
That's awesome. I will check that out, Thomas, because that's fun. Then Peter Cook and Dudley Moore come out for their monologue, a fun little stand-up routine, and then they go right into a bit where Peter Cook plays a producer who is auditioning actors. I think to your point earlier, Thomas, you can tell in this stand-up intro that they did in the monologue even, they had been doing this together for years, and their chemistry was like spot on.
Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine. And am I giving Peter Cook and Dudley Moore too much credit that this was some sort of commentary and satire on how people view sophisticated English humor?
No, that's exactly what it was. You're right. Yeah.
Okay. Because the premise is stupid, if we're being honest. But it's presented in a way where it's very sharp. It's very sounds sophisticated because of the word choices. All wrapped around a very, very silly premise. So I was picking up on some satire. I don't know if I was giving them too much credit. What do you guys think?
I'm totally with you on that. Some poll came out and they named Peter Cook as the father of modern satire. So he was all about satire. And this bit was just full of it.
I think this is one of, if not their earliest bit. I think Peter Cook, if I remember correctly, wrote this when he was 18 or 19 years old. I think actually performed it before Dudley Moore, but it's the two of them who really popularized it. And so they had been doing this for well over a decade by the time we saw it. And to your point, Thomas, it's written really funny. If you sit there and listen to it, where he makes the joke about his leg and he talks about, you're short. I think it's like something to the tune of 1. Yeah. And my favorite line was, he said, I have nothing against your right leg. Neither do you. Like, there's just some great little one-liners in there that he just says so offhandedly. It's so funny.
And I think that proves that things tend to sound smarter, maybe coming from an English accent. I don't know what the science behind that, or if there's any white papers that explain that phenomenon. But it really does. It sounds a lot smarter coming from them.
It was great. I just loved Dudley Moore hopping onto stage. Like when he's doing that, that was so well done. And like he's hopping back and forth as he's shaking his hand. And that was great.
Well-oiled machine, totally.
From there, we go to what I think was probably the most recognizable sketch from this episode. Peter Cook comes to a prison and speaking to the warden, George Coe.
George Coe!
I said, George Coe, question mark, exclamation point. I was so excited.
I never remembered him being in this. As many times as I've seen this sketch, I never remembered George Coe being the warden.
So this sketch, Peter Cook is auditioning prisoners to be in his production of Gigi. So all of the characters are like different women. So the joke here is that they're in a prison. All of these guys are going to have to dress up as women. It really gives a chance for the cast to come in and everyone to kind of do their own thing. Dan comes in first and plays someone who killed his entire family. And Peter Cook gave a great line where he says, I don't imagine you get much mail.
I had that note. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yes. Yeah, me too. That was like one of the standout lines.
So Chevy comes on and he does a bit and then he goes after Gilda. And then Garrett comes on in what is probably the most famous part of this sketch.
Get me a shotgun and kill all the whiteys I see. Get me a shotgun and kill all the whiteys I see. When I kill all the whiteys I see, and whitey won't bother me. Gonna get me a shotgun and kill all the whiteys I see.
That's like if they have a best of Garrett Morris, that's one of the things that's probably front and center.
Absolutely.
Right there.
Yeah. It was like one of my first Garrett Morris moments I ever saw. So, yeah. I just thought this sketch was great because it gave everyone time to like showcase something.
Yeah, it was a nice like a parade of crazies, I guess, that we see a lot of in today's SNL. They just do like a parade of impressions or things like that. But this was like a parade of crazies. And I have a question about Chevy's part. Was he supposed to have an accent? It seemed like he had an accent that came and went. It seemed almost like he did a good job, but it seems like he wasn't quite committed to this accent that he put on.
Yeah, it seemed a little hit or miss.
Yeah, because he said his name was Clyde Sankey.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the joke is he does a little joke and he said, say my name. They say, Clyde Sankey. He said, you're welcome. And then it seemed like he had an accent there, and then he just sounded like Chevy in the rest of it. Right. So I was like drawn to that.
Brad, what were your thoughts on this one?
I like this one. I didn't. It's funny, and Garrett is so good. I mean, he's such a good singer, and it's a great showcase of Garrett's talents. Which, as we've been watching week by week, I miss not seeing him as much as we want to. I thought it went a little long. When they got to Belushi, I was like, this is going long. And I was wondering where it was how they were going to end it. And actually they did a good job with a callback to Garrett's joke where John quotes the song about killing whiteys, which I thought was funny. Like it was like, how are they going to like wrap this up? And they had a decent way to end it, but it's definitely the highlight. Like you said, is the Garrett Morris in the middle is the best. Yeah.
Garrett stole the show there. And when John came out, it was kind of crazy because he looked the most like Jim Belushi that I've ever seen.
I had that too. John reminded me of Jim.
It was the haircut or something, but he looked so much like Jim. It was unbelievable.
It was the looks. It was the mannerisms. Even his mannerisms. He would like kind of cock his chin a little bit and look. It was total Jim.
It was uncanny. And I don't confuse them. I think they look different enough. But in this specific sketch, and listeners go back and watch this, and I really thought it was like Jim for like a split second coming out.
I agree. Like when Belushi came out, I kind of thought, oh, Garrett should be the end of this. And then it kept going. It was almost 10 minutes long, this sketch.
Oof, wow. You know what, I think part of it too is after seeing this part of this sketch, at least for so many years, all you know is Garrett. So you think if you're going to watch it start to finish, it's Garrett. Because I don't know how I've seen Garrett's portion of this sketch dozens and dozens of times. I've probably watched this whole sketch 3 times. You know what I mean? Like you're just so used to seeing Garrett that you're just surprised that it doesn't end with him and there's more after it.
But this was fun. I thought this was a great first sketch It included all of the male members of the cast and Peter Cook and George Coe, but not Dudley Moore for some reason. It had me feeling optimistic.
That's not going to last.
After that, Peter Cook comes on to introduce Neil Sedaka. When the camera goes to Neil Sedaka, he's sitting at his piano with a little Walkman or a little speaker up to his ear listening to, I'm pretty sure that's a Neil Sedaka song. And then he goes into a very slow rendition of his song Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, which totally threw me off. I wasn't sure what he was singing at first, and then I realized it and I was like, wait, this song isn't supposed to be this slow and like a little piano ballad, right?
No, it's a early 60s ditty that's like, I heard growing up on like the oldie stations that my dad would listen to. So it definitely doesn't sound like that. I appreciated the reworking of this song ultimately.
Well, apparently many people did, because it got all the way up to number 8 on the pop chart in 1975.
Did it? Oh, they released this? Or they released
his
a
version?
different version of it. I didn't know that.
He released this rearrangement of the song
the next
in 1975.
Year, right?
The
the last
prior year. Yeah. And it got up to number 8.
So that's why they clapped when he started singing? Because I was like, why are they clapping already?
Because everybody loves Neil Sedaka but you.
Because you're a grump, apparently. And
this was like the anti...
I think it was probably just
This was like the anti-Bill Withers.
Thomas has been recording with us for half an hour and he's already got you pegged as the grump. This is perfect. I love this episode already.
So before this episode, I knew of Neil Sedaka, so I'm not gonna lie. And I was, not a huge fan because I was, I guess, unfamiliar. I thought I was unfamiliar. I actually thought his name was Neil Sedaka for a long time.
Okay.
I would switch the D and the K.
We debated beforehand what the pronunciation was, and I refused to learn it.
Because that's what grumps do. So, but I didn't know that he was the one who did Calendar Girl and Breaking Up Is Hard to Do. So I figured out that I was familiar with Neil Sedaka. I just didn't know that was him. He's one of those artists. Right. I thought this performance was pleasant. The next one is really what sold me, but I thought this performance in particular, I thought it was pleasant. There was nothing for me to dislike about it. So I think it was a nice, decent start. It didn't have me turning away and running away from this. So I'm going to give him, overall, I think it was a net positive for the show, this performance.
Speaking of what could be a net positive, Thomas, you are in luck. I have this envelope, okay? Stay.
Are you going to do a Johnny Carson?
Yeah, see, thank you. You and about 4 people will get this. Okay, bear with me. Ready?
Sorry.
Hold it to my head. Joan Baez, Esther Phillips, Anne Murray.
Oh, you're doing the whole Johnny Carson bit.
Name 3 musical guests who somehow are not as horrible as Neil Sedaka.
Oh
my gosh. That was... You took the long way to get to that and criticize Neil Sedaka.
Well, that's why I figured it'll all get edited.
That's the commitment.
Commitment to the bit. That's what we're all about. Commitment to the bit.
You put way too much effort into that bit.
I didn't think we'd have this much to talk about. I'm sorry. Cut it out. You can edit.
I like the bit.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you enjoyed Neil Sedaka, Thomas. I thought this performance wasn't as bad as Brad definitely seemed to think it was.
It was fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure I feel like you like the next bit, Gary.
I did like the next bit. Don Pardo's Holiday in an Elevator. Dan and Gilda are on a couch as a married couple, wishing that they could go away, when a voiceover from Don Pardo comes on to pitch them Don Pardo's Holiday in an Elevator, wherein you can travel the world in one building. So Dan and Gilda go to this building. They take luggage with them. And the whole premise is they go up the elevator. The doors open. Obviously, there's a green screen behind Dudley Moore, who now appears. And he has different costumes for every country. I thought this was so much fun.
I have 2 notes. One is, this is so quick, it's so fast, I can't write any notes. And then all I could do at the end is write, what was with Dan accent? That's all I had. Like, it's funny, and like the Dudley Moore constantly changing the outfits, but it was just so fast. It was so bizarre.
I couldn't pinpoint the Dan accent, so I can't help you out with that one. Gary?
It's a weird Midwestern thing or something. I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah. And I don't mean it as bad, like the quickness and all. It's just like it's a weird, funny, bizarrely fast. There's so much happening sketch. It's just like, oh my God, there's so much going on. Like the animal heads that came in and she's feeding them. Like there's just so much happening so fast.
I think the repetitive nature of this sketch actually helped it. I think we needed that.
Yes.
That was the whole joke. So I appreciated how repetitive it was. And I think you're right, Gary, about Dan's accent, to go back to that, because every time it seems like in comedy, couples are depicted as going on vacation. They're from the Midwest.
Right. Yes.
I don't know. Something that just dawned on me.
That's good.
That you watch a comedy, and if it's a couple vacationing, they're probably from Ohio or wherever.
Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll say that. And I love when Don Pardo is incorporated into sketches in any way. And this one happens to be named after him. So that always gets me when Don Pardo is incorporated into the silly.
And Dudley Moore, I thought, was great in this. Like, he opens the one time they're in Tahiti and he just has the hula skirt and he's moving it as if he's hula dancing. And then they open it and he's like, I'm not ready.
And it's the same animal head, but different animals. So I think it started off as like a deer or something, but then they just put was it a bear?
Well, they put antlers on it when he went to Spain and he stabbed it. And then, it's a bear.
Good prop work by the team in Dudley.
It was good prop work, yeah.
Oh, we went from there to Weekend Update. Same old Weekend Update bit. He starts right off with the Generalissimo Francisco Franco joke at the top. Doesn't wait to get that in there.
Are the laps for that joke, from your observation, getting smaller and smaller? Are people still... Because it seemed like the laps for this one were kind of toned down a little bit. Like the audience didn't burst out like I had heard them. Has that been a kind of a theme for the Generalissimo Franco jokes that you've noticed?
I think when he has the line Generalissimo Francisco Franco is still dead, that's the line that people are like, that's the catchphrase.
That's the one that hits.
Yeah. This one he changed it up a little bit and everyone's like, you didn't do the catchphrase.
Yeah, so they were like, that was okay. That was a joke that existed on Weekend Update.
Exactly. Exactly. Again, a lot of Reagan bits, a lot of political jokes. This was fine. I didn't think it was a great Weekend Update.
Yeah, it's kind of very middle of the road. I mean, they still are trying the Angola bit out again. I feel like they've beaten that to death, trying to call Angola.
Well, that part did make me laugh again because it's a callback to his phone gag in the beginning where he's talking about beads.
And Jane sells it. I mean, it's Jane. Yeah, of course.
Isn't Jane great?
How great is Jane,
How
Thomas?
great is Jane?
There it is.
Yeah.
Ding. There it is.
So were the beads that he was referencing adult-oriented beads? Is that what we're supposed to believe?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. All of his phone gags are sexual in nature.
He had a good recall in this when he does the MOUSE joke, which he was from episode 2. That was fun to see that. And he has another great flub where he flubs his line. And again, he's really good and has fun with it before they go to commercial. Is good.
Yes. And I feel like he did that. And then he even was like, he just shook his head like, all right.
Yeah, he flubbed a line. So it was a Patty Hearst joke about having to snort the polio vaccine or something. And then he flubbed it and then he brushed it off without saying anything. But then he flubbed a line a few minutes later. He said Great Britain instead of Great Britain. And that's where I think he covered for himself and made it funny. He spoke like Spanish or some sort of gibberish or something to cover it up.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the Chevy that I like. That's like the part of his personality. I think he could be quick. I think he can make fun of himself when he wants to. And him handling that line flub is an example of a Chevy that I do like. Because like Brad, I'm not like the hugest Chevy fan. And most of that's for like my own sort of moral reasons when it comes to Chevy. But I think he handled that really well. That was maybe the biggest laugh that I got was him covering for the Great Britain flub.
Well, we talk about this a lot where it's kind of difficult a little bit to watch these episodes with a clear head because you're not coming in fresh. You're coming in with the last 40 years of history behind you. And we've talked about it a lot where I am not, in general, the biggest Chevy Chase fan in the world. And I think a lot of that comes from his bad 90s, 80s, 90s movies and just late Chevy and what Chevy Chase became. And it's been really fun to watch these early SNL episodes before Chevy was a huge star, before his ego got so big, because he is very funny. And I think I forgot that having not seen this for a while. Like, he is very funny.
Yeah, up until early 90s, maybe Funny Farm era Chevy Chase or something. Like, yeah, he had comedy chops. Like, there was a reason. I know he was a tall, good-looking guy, but there's a reason he had good comic timing. Those early, even European Vacation kind of stands up to me. And Chevy, it's just when he wants to, he could be very likable and very good.
Yes. When he wants to. I think that's
when he wants to.
Yeah. We had another Lorraine on the street bit. I did not think this worked this week, she asks.
I didn't think it was funny at all. There's like no point to it.
I agree, and I felt like when the camera went back to Chevy, he also agreed. Not great.
Also not great, the commercial they cut to in between Weekend Update.
Yeah, so we went back to the Movers sketch that we saw in episode 3.
It's still not funny.
Thomas, what's your take on this?
Decent sight gags, I guess, but I don't know. It wasn't that great. I mean, the commercial parodies over the years will get better and better. I think this is definitely doesn't seem like the era for them, but that's all it was. Is just like sight gags of the people in the moving van and all of that. I don't know. At least it didn't go on too long.
That's fair.
And I always feel a little disheartened when the best thing we can say about anything is that at least it didn't go on too long.
Which is sometimes the best thing you could say. I mean, almost 50 years worth of sketches and bits. I mean, sometimes that is the best thing you could say about something.
Yes, absolutely. And we come back to Emily Latilla's editorial reply. She has a commentary on Soviet jewelry.
I didn't think it was that funny, but the reason was, and I will admit my own ignorance, I did not realize what she was making fun of until it was over. I spent her whole bit trying to figure out what she meant by jewelry. And because I didn't know that, and then when I finally did realize it, her bit was funnier. But my own, whether this was like too topical for me or I just don't know my history or whatnot, that is why I didn't like this bit. I didn't understand it myself.
Yeah, same. I think jewelry and Jewry sounded too close together to me, where it took me a minute to figure out what the heck was even going on. And I guess I'm not very learned, because I had to look up what Soviet Jewry was, and apparently it's a international human rights campaign that advocated for the right of Jews in the Soviet Union to emigrate. And this had that movement had been going on for a long time. There were probably new protests when this episode aired or something.
Oh, sure.
So it was in the news.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what they were talking about. I had to go seek it out to understand the joke.
Yeah. And once you understand it, it is so much funnier.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. It works.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an Emily Latilla bit, it's paint by numbers, which it isn't always bad. I just like to understand the joke, which I may have in 1976. I may have understood it in 2 seconds.
I think it was 2 parts for us, right? Like, obviously, none of us were watching this live, so we weren't familiar with it in the time. But also, the wordplay is so close to what it actually is that it's hard to figure it out, even.
If you didn't like this Emily Latilla, there's like 25 more Emily Latillas to make up for it, at least.
I liked the Ford joke. I thought the Ford stuff was really good.
It was fun to hear him poke fun at Ford without having to be Ford.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Like, they start out making fun of Gerald Ford on the show as being kind of bumbly and buffoony. And I really noticed that last week, they really started hitting him up as being stupid, which I didn't find as funny. Like, I thought they kind of took a really hard turn on him recently, and it was fun to kind of see this go a little bit different. And it felt very Lampoon to me, the whole identified man falling out of a second-story window of the White House, whoever it was, it was. I like this a lot better. It was really smart. It was written really well. And like I said, I like them kind of getting away from the dumb Gerald Ford, and the buffoon stuff to me is funnier.
And that was a very good call of saying it sounded very lampoonish, because I was feeling something like it had more bite to it, I guess, or more of like, we're not supposed to say this, but screw it, we're going to say it anyway about the president. And that seemed more like the spirit of Lampoon. And it didn't quite connect with me until you said that. And I think that was just such a great point. And the whole premise was we're not supposed to poke fun at Gerald Ford. But then he said, in other news, an unidentified man fell out of the window at a White House. So it's almost like we're not supposed to do this, but here we are doing this. That's like a rebel Lampoon spirit. I think that was a good way to put it. Now, I also liked combining the last two stories into one. I thought that was a pretty good bit. I think that was a nice way to end Update instead of a traditional one story and we're out. That's not totally how they completely ended it, but that was toward the end of Update. Yeah. And he said, well, we don't have time. We have two more stories, so I'm just going to combine them. And I thought I enjoyed that.
That too felt very Lampoon to me, that idea of combining the two stories. Yeah.
And they end Weekend Update with not news for the hard of hearing, not news for the dead, but news for the wet. And it's our friend Alan Zweibel getting a shower and repeating the top story. I thought that was fun. That was funny.
Chevy liked it.
Yes, he did.
I was happy that Alan Zweibel got some airtime.
It's always good to see Zweibel.
Yeah, I like seeing the writers. Just in any era, I like when writers pop up. When like Gary Richardson pops up currently, when Emily Spivey sometimes used to pop up, Paul Appel. I don't know. I'm a geek. I like seeing the writers on screen sometimes.
Yeah, get them on there. The next bit we have is a talk show called Table Talk. And this is just a Cook and More bit where Dudley Moore is interviewing Sir Arthur Strebe Giebling. He's the owner of the Frog and Peach restaurant. And he goes on to describe all of these horrible dishes that they serve, which incorporate frogs and peaches.
All two of their dishes.
Yeah. It felt like more, I'll be honest.
It really did. Good call.
Yeah, there was some funny physical humor that Cook did when he was crossing his legs really quick and knocking the stuff out of Moore's hand.
That first bit when he crosses his legs and kicks the clipboard out of his hand, that was the funniest thing I think I've seen all night.
All night?
Yes. Laugh out loud bit, yes. He's so quick, he kicks it, Moore catches it. Just like the whole like kind of quickness vibe of it was just funny. Unexpected. I liked it. It's another old bit. I mean, I was excited to see the two of them. We hadn't, since the monologue, we had not seen the two of them together. So my first note was like, great, the two of them finally.
I thought it was interesting to follow the whole Peach and Frog thing. It did go a little too long, but I thought there was a little string of some sort of narrative. There was quick pace, wordsmithing, again, that like British style. Of course, that Peter and Dudley are known for, but a little long, but I still was kind of overall interested in where they were going with it.
I feel like even Peter Cook felt it was going long, because I'm not familiar with the bit that much, but it did seem odd that he kept going back to the crossing legs gag. And I don't know if he was just trying to like keep it interesting or keep it going, because I didn't really do anything after that first time.
I actually read that as like, oh, that got the audience laughing earlier in the sketch, and he just nothing else, like the wordplay wasn't grabbing.
It wasn't
the audience,
hitting. So. Sure, yeah, could be.
The term diminishing returns isn't in a British comedy lexicon.
Thomas, do you want to set up the next thing we see?
So the next piece was a Gary Weiss short film. So Gary Weiss's films, as we've all seen, aren't quite comedic. This one, I guess it depends on your point of view. But basically, it's a short film about a gag gift or practical gift joke shop in, I'm guessing, New York. And he's interviewing the manager or owner of this shop. So it's an older lady. She's showing off whoopee cushions and a mug and spiders that you can play jokes on your friends with. And like I said, it's an older lady with the sort of deadpan delivery that and I don't know if this was intentional on Gary's part, but I like the juxtaposition of the deadpan delivery and the stupid things that she was talking about. And that's kind of what made this work a little bit for me, was seeing this lady. And I've seen Gary Weiss's pieces get criticized, and a lot of times for good reason. And I don't know if the humor was intentional in this piece, but I honestly found it amusing.
Yeah, this is funny.
Yeah.
Like I thought this was really funny. I think the reason I thought it was so funny, let me ask you this. They're not actors. She's a real person, right? Like he's interviewing real people. That's why I found this so funny, is because this could have been a sketch. This is the kind of thing you would have written, to your point, Thomas, the deadpan delivery of the old lady talking about whoopee cushions and bugs you put in salads and black soap, and this is the blood soap. And the fact that it wasn't written and that it was a real woman with legit sincerity trying to sell you on the dumbest novelty things was hilarious.
This interview with this woman, she was great. Like she was so sincere and so, and when she explains the peanut brittle gag and how she did it to her friends, and I
loved her.
She was wonderful.
But could you not see this being written like 5 years down the road? Like that's why this is so much funny. This is what somebody would write as a sketch. Like I'm going to write this to be funny, and this was real.
But I think that's like what I liked about this, and I appreciate about this not being a sketch and that it was real, was that she was so lovable because she was having a blast with this, right? Like she sincerely loved everything that she had in this gag shop. And she's like telling you about things. And then she's like, you put it in a salad or on the table.
She's giving you options like do this or that, whatever you want.
Yeah. And it was still tempered. It was like tempered excitement. I she wasn't too excited. That's just her demeanor. But yeah, it was great. I'm so excited because I thought that I was going to like this and the two of you wouldn't. So I thought I'd be on an island with this film.
I loved this. I thought this was great.
That is awesome.
It took a little time to get into it, but 100%. And she's got some great lines herself. Like there was the line where she's talking about the dictionary and the Polish dictionary. She's like, because Polish jokes are very popular. Like so deadpan, matter of fact. Is like, this makes total sense why I would have this. Like,
yeah.
So good.
And this is 1976 because Polish jokes are very popular in pop culture.
Yes.
In 1976.
Oh, it was so good. It was so good. This is another one. I hope Albert Brooks saw this and took notes. Are
we almost done with
No,
I'm
going to rip on him every week if I can.
No? Oh, geez. So there's more. There's a few more.
We're done with Albert Brooks films. We're not done with. We're not done with Gary editing out Brad's Albert Brooks tirades.
Fair enough.
I have a feeling Thomas will be back next week because Gary just loves the double teams. So I can see where this is going.
Yeah. The next sketch was back to Cook and Moore doing Sonny and Cher of the British Isles. So Peter Cook dressed as Cher, Dudley Moore dressed as Sonny Bono. It was kind of funny how, because of the height difference of these two and the height difference of Sonny and Cher, they did have a striking resemblance to them. And that to me was kind of where the humor ended.
Did you say it was Sonny and Cher of the British Isles?
Yeah, that's how they introduced themselves.
I missed, because one of my questions was, why are they Scottish? I missed the Scottish point. So, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why.
Though, to your point, I don't think they needed to be. I think this could have just been done with any accent or no accent.
Or not at all.
Like maybe they just wanted to show off Scottish accents. But that played no part in whatever I think they were trying to do.
Right. I thought the song would be geared towards something Scottish, or the jokes would be, but no, maybe they had a lot of plaid fabric, and that's why.
Yeah, it was geared toward apparently Cher's personal life. I guess she had left Sonny for Dwayne Allman or Greg Allman, whichever
Greg
Allman. And it was Greg Allman.
This is like the fourth time that they've done that this season, where they've referenced the Cher and Greg Allman romance.
I'm starting to think I don't get English humor.
Yeah, well, English humor is fine. To Gary's earlier point, there was not much humor in this, though. In my opinion, I don't really know. I don't really know what they were going for here necessarily. Just showing off accents, and we're gonna dress up.
Is this the only bit the two of them do together that isn't a rehash of their old stuff? I guess, right? So
I think so.
Can we give credit for that? I'm just trying to.
I'd be more impressed if this was a rehash of something they did in the 60s. Because they'd be clairvoyant at that point, and that would really impress me.
Yes, Exactly.
And I guess we got is this our first drag performance?
Oh, yes, I did have that written down. I believe it is.
Which I'm actually happy that award does not go to Garrett Morris. That does make me happy.
Yes. Peter Cook played it off quite well in those big boots.
Let's get to the next one. I'm intrigued to hear this discussion.
Okay, me too. So our next piece is Gilda on stage by herself, and then she's joined by Scred from the Muppets, who's dressed as a bee because he wants to be part of the bee bit. And she tells him, well, there's no bee sketch this week. And, and then Brad, I was like, well, Brad's got to love this Muppet bit because Scred says, I can do Weekend Update. Toy boat, toy boat, toy boat.
That's my first note. Toy boat, toy boat. Best Muppet joke yet.
Yes. I loved this. Again, Muppets, we've decided, Thomas, that the Muppets are at their best when they're with humans, when they interact with Lily Tomlin and Candace Bergen to this point, and now with Gilda. And Scred seems to be the one. He's great. Jerry Nelson, the Muppet performer, he's wonderful in all of these bits with everyone.
Yeah, I would agree.
And for the first time, they finally got rid of the Land of Gorge nonsense and just had Muppet performer on stage, because that's what we complained about the last two times they did this, was just cut to the two of them. It would be great. And here it is. And I thought it worked great. It was short. It was funny. You know, the usual fun interaction that he has with Gilda. Like, this was really fun. I loved it.
Did Scred ask Gilda if he could play with her moogies?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if I was just watching this at that point. It was too late at night and I started hallucinating things. Okay. Wow.
Thomas, this is 1975. You need to remember.
It definitely is.
1976.
Yeah,
so things
it's
were
definitely
a little different back then.
1976.
This was really a twofer, though, because you got the Muppet bit and you got that adorable Gilda time.
Yeah, you got the Gilda solo. Yeah, sure.
So I thought it worked. I thought it was fun, except for the Moogies part.
Yeah, that was a little weird, but everything else totally.
Yeah, I agree.
But I thought you would appreciate Scred jumping on Chevy.
Yeah, it was a great joke.
What I understand you didn't enjoy, Brad, was the next performance from Neil Sedaka.
That's ridiculous.
He's performing Lonely Night.
Parentheses, Angel Face.
Yes, sorry. I did forget about the parentheses. Song from his 1975 album, The Hungry Years, which Captain and Tennille covered in 1976 this year, and it made it all the way to number 3.
Okay, what I would like to do, I am just going to read my notes in order, and then I will stop, and I will let you two discuss so I just don't go off. So here we go. He is really trying to sell this. What is that move when he gets to the chorus? No one is digging this. Who ever listened to this? Oh, and the necklace on the outside of the turtleneck. Nice look. Do you think the backup singers are off camera because they refuse to be seen singing this shit? Stop mugging the camera, 4 exclamation points. I am done.
I thought that he was just really enjoying performing this song. He genuinely looks like he's enjoying playing the piano. I wasn't sure about the background singers and the rest of the band that was playing and why we didn't see them, but that was a question I had. But I thought he like his joy made me happy.
He was having the greatest time at that piano, and it was honestly, like, genuinely so much fun for me to watch him have a blast up there. He was very chipper, and I was rooting for him. I was sitting there like I was just like rooting for him to nail this performance because he was having such a good time. And I think, like, maybe I'm just getting older and less cynical, but this was so great to watch somebody just have pure joy performing a song up there. Like, I was so on board. Like, the song started and I was like, all right, here's Neil Sedaka. The last performance was fine, whatever. But just his enthusiasm and chipper persona just had me rooting for him, and I had such a blast. Like, it was the polar opposite, Brad. Like, what annoyed you about this performance is what had me go on board with this performance. I loved it. I couldn't even tell you, like, I don't even know if I liked the song, to be honest with you. I just liked Neil's performance because he was having the best time. The most fun, I would argue, that anybody has had on an SNL stage that maybe I've ever seen.
That could be.
That could be. Yeah, that could be.
My default for this is Fred Berry.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
With the Lockers. Yeah. When the Lockers performed Thomas, go back and watch that, because that group had so much fun, and that really was the most fun performance I think we've seen all season.
And I'm sure I would have been rooting for them just as hard as I was rooting for Neil.
Oh my God,
definitely,
yes.
Definitely would be. We come back to a talk show hosted by Jane,
Of course.
called Backstage Banter, where she is interviewing male impersonator Sheila Ellington. So Sheila Ellington is a woman. She's a mother, a wife, and she's impersonating a man. And it's John playing this woman. And he gives a pretty deadpan, straight interview to Jane.
I'm going to let our guests start this one off.
You know, I'm usually not the type who will watch something that was from 1976 and say, "Ooh, that didn't age well. Let's look at it through 2023's lens." But I didn't enjoy sitting through this because of the fact that it didn't age well. And usually I'm pretty tolerant, like I said, of things that don't quote unquote age well. But this was kind of rough, because the whole joke was, to me, I mean, this word didn't really necessarily exist back then, but it was bordering on like transphobic. I would say it was a little uncomfortable for me, to be honest with you. The only redeeming part, or slightly redeeming part, was when John did an impression of Rod Steiger singing. But other than that, it was honestly a little uncomfortable. And I'm not usually I usually give more grace to things that were done almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, it was funny. I went very high. I was like, thank God, Jane Curtin. And then my next note is, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was, I thought John's performance was good. I don't think the writing was really there, to everything you just said. And there's nothing substantial or good about it. But, I thought what John worked with, I thought his performance was good. I loved how he worked in the impression. Yeah, that was the funniest part. And, the other thing I kind of noted from this is an example, I think, of a sketch that John couldn't or wouldn't pull off in season 3 or 4. And I do like watching these kind of John Belushi's more subdued performances that he does in season 1 before everything becomes over the top and bombastic. So it doesn't make it a good sketch, but as a diehard Belushi fan, I do love seeing these other sides of John every now and then, even if it is in something that's not very good like this.
Oh, well, at least it wasn't long, right? Is that that's
Indeed.
The next commercial, I guess it is, also wasn't long. And it was a commercial for No Commercial Products. It's Chevy and Jacqueline Carlin again. And it's just footage of them walking down the street with their arms around one another. And there's voiceover, and I don't know. This one lost me. I was like, I don't know what the bit is here.
Well, it's supposed to be an anti-commercial, or it's supposed to be a commentary on like commercialism and capitalism and how commercials promise people that they're going to be more attractive if they use their product.
Yeah.
So that was like it was their bit. I think it was a little clumsy though, honestly. I think that's what they were going for, but in a very short, somewhat clumsy package. That was my best guess. I might be giving it too much credit and projecting.
Go for it.
But that's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I same. I was like, this is just, wow, this is short and kind of doesn't really go anywhere. And the only thing I kind of interesting, I think this was originally aired on episode 3, the Rob Reiner episode, even though we didn't see it on the DVD or Peacock, but I believe this was originally included in the live broadcast in episode 3. But yeah, not much else.
But there was something next segue that was really short that I think did work. So it was like record time as far as short sketches goes. So it's my show now, Gary.
Yes,
so
no, I'm good. I'm good with this.
No.
I'm learning a lot listening to you, Thomas. So please go on. Thank you.
Just taught you how to do a segue. I'm just kidding, man. So it's they're in an operating room, and Dudley Moore, I believe, is playing the head surgeon, and he basically asks the doctors or the other people in the operating room to do a show of hands to declare the patient legally dead. So that's how they're doing it. Is all who think the patient is legally dead, raise your hand. And the only objector in the room was the patient himself, played by Garrett Morris. Might be stupid, I don't know, but in such a short package, this actually did work for me. I enjoyed that button on the sketch.
I'm totally with you on that. The subtlety that Garrett raised his hand with, it was just nice and slow and measured, and everyone else is moving on at that point that he's moving up. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I liked it too. I thought it was really funny. You knew what was going to happen. You knew what the joke was going to be. And for whatever reason, I was expecting the hand to like fly up when they said if there was anybody against it. I was ready for the hand to like shoot up in the air. And then when it didn't, it was just kind of nice and slow and everything went. I think it's a very SNL way to tell that joke. And it was good.
And yeah, it was less than a minute. So it was quick and got to the point and it was fun.
It's the perfect thing to where if they need to fill time, it's very short. So they can, Lauren and them could just kind of plug something like this in if they need, where they need to. So I think they should maybe even currently try to have ideas or pieces like that are super short, but that just maybe transitional things or to fill time or whatever. But I was actually kind of impressed.
Yeah.
And they've gotten good at it by this point. Like in the beginning, first few episodes, they've have a lot of these one-note sketches that I complained about a lot, that they didn't do anything and they weren't funny, didn't go anywhere. But now they've been doing this coupled with the longer sketches. It's a nice change of pace, but they've figured out a way to really do these really great short one-note sketches, and they're really funny and they come off really well.
And there wasn't too much, like they didn't oversell it with the dialogue either. It was just really short and to the point and like, well, he's dead. Can we get a show of hands?
And that premise in and of itself made me laugh. Like that's how you're declaring somebody dead. And I might be a simpleton, Brad, but I didn't see the end joke coming with Garrett raising his hand. I don't know why. I just didn't see that coming. So can you imagine my simpleton reaction was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. The patient raised his hand. Who would have thought?
The only question I have in this is, where's Peter Cook? Like, there's no reason for him to not be in this. Kind of your question of like in the prison sketch, why isn't Dudley Moore the warden? Like, why don't these two guys do any sketches together other than I guess Sonny and Cher? Like, were they just not that happy with each other at this point? I don't know. This is a very obvious choice where you could have put both the hosts in, would have been funny, would have been great to see them together, and for whatever reason doesn't happen.
I don't know. I'm trying to think back to other co-hosts and how frequently I feel like whenever you see co-hosts, they're frequently split up and it's one or the other.
That's a good point, I guess. Yeah.
Well, Cook and Moore are back for our last sketch of the night. Cook is playing a shepherd named Arthur Shepherd.
I'm already on board.
Right?
British
It's so
British
stupid.
humor.
I'm already on board.
It's so good. And Dudley Moore plays Matthew. And he's a reporter, I believe, for the Bethlehem Star was the newspaper. And he's interviewing him about the birth of Jesus. And so Peter Cook goes into the whole story.
Well, what did he say to you?
Well, he sort of singled me out from the other lowly shepherd folk like.
How marvellous.
And he said, unto ye a child is born.
Yeah.
Unto ye a son is given.
Yeah, what was your reaction?
Total shock. I mean, I wasn't even married at the time. And I thought, blimey, what was I doing this time last year, you know?
Yeah.
Could it be that little bird I met down the Shepherd's Delight?
This was something that I thought was great based on Dudley Moore's performance because he's writing on the scroll the whole time and reacting to Peter Cook and asking him the right questions and just like giving him different looks. It was, I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I thought Dudley was about to break
Yes.
in a couple of moments. It seemed like he was really enjoying it too. I liked the premise. I thought, again, it was very interesting to follow the narrative to me and where they were going with it. Very British sketch, which I appreciated. I actually really bought into this one. As far as the Dudley Moore, Peter Cook, kind of the bits that they brought to the show, this one probably worked the most for me. Just overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, very funny. Liked it. Again, another one of their well-rehearsed bits. They knew it very well. They were doing this on their Broadway show that they, I think, finished up the year before. So it was, yeah, there's nothing not to like about it. It's well-written, well-performed. It's great.
When you see comedy teams like these two, especially comedy teams that have been around for as long as them, you understand why they're a comedy team and why they've succeeded for so long because they're great together. That's our last sketch of the night. And then we go to Good Nights, which is Cook and Moore. And they come right out and say that the cold open didn't work. And we're going to show you how it was supposed to work. And so Chevy's there. And he's once again in the police uniform, which I just thought was funny. Make him get back into that costume. And they do the whole setup. And then the gag doesn't work again, John. I mean, Chevy like puts his head down pretty low to the box, and then the hand just comes up as, I don't know if it's as far as Belushi could get it or what, but then Dudley Moore takes it and smashes Chevy in the face with the whipped cream or whatever it is, shaving cream. I don't know.
I wonder if there was some sabotaging going on Belushi's part, because we know there things between he and Chevy. We're in mid-season now. They might have been getting frosty at this point. So it wouldn't surprise me if Belushi's like, you know what? I'm going to screw with him again.
I
don't
love
know.
this theory.
Conspiracy theory here.
I honestly, I thought that, but then I thought, no, I'm being too cynical. So
I didn't.
No, they
I
were
didn't even think
petty.
of
I
it.
love Belushi, but he was kind of a petty dude, especially when it came to Chevy Chase. So I don't know. I think my conspiracy theory might have some merit.
this is why Brad's
like
a fan. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're stuck out there for what seems like forever. I mean, Peter Cook just sits smoking away, hanging out. Did the audio go out? It seemed like they were trying to talk a couple times. And then at one point, Dudley grabs the boom down, but it was just like none of the cast came out. It was just very weird. The four of them were like, well, what do we do for the next 90 seconds?
It was kind of strange. They seemed like they were having fun. And that's our show.
That is our show.
Brad seems underwhelmed.
I didn't love this episode. I didn't. And I'm sure maybe I missed some of the jokes, or there's that again, kind of aged British humor that I didn't love. But I think, after talking about it, what it really boils down to, it's kind of what I've said before. There wasn't a lot of the hosts with the cast. This was very similar to like Lily Tomlin, where they brought their own routine. So if you like Cook and Moore, you probably love this because you got to see their best bits again. But if you love Saturday Night Live and wanted to see the characters or the people that you like on the show, you didn't get them that much. It wasn't a very SNL featured episode. And for that, I didn't love it. And what's funny too? I think, this is the end of a 3-week run, right?
Yes.
I think Peter Cook and Dudley Moore were booked as hosts, a few weeks prior, before the Elliot Gould episode, obviously, and before the Buck Henry episode, where they thought they needed to lean on the hosts more than they had to. And after we saw these last 2 episodes where the cast really shines on their own and can really hold the show on their own, it's a little bit almost of a step backwards then to watch where you bring in hosts who kind of take it over again, which we hadn't seen in a while. And I think just that kind of is what set in for me a bit.
Yeah, I think it was I would say I would give it a passing grade. So I think it was a decent episode. There was nothing outright bad to me. I forget which sketch already.
The Belushi sketch, though?
So the Belushi, yeah. So you're right. Yeah, I guess I just chose to kind of forget that and place it in its own category of just. So yeah, the Belushi sketch with Jane Curtin was bad to me. But I think overall, this episode, I would give a passing grade. But to your point, Brad, I think you're right. I wish we could have seen the cast join in on the more British style sketches. And I understand that these were already bits that Peter Cook and Dudley Moore brought to the show, but I would have just loved to see the cast try to play in that style. It's like seeing Dan Aykroyd with how he could be a wordsmith and his delivery. I would have loved to see him play in the British style, but none of the cast did. It was anything that was true British humor was only Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. And I would have just loved to see more of a meshing of styles. And I think it's too bad that we didn't see that.
Did Dan do anything besides the Don Pardo elevator sketch? Now that you mentioned his name?
The Utah prison.
The prison sketch in the beginning.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
But yeah, I mean, no one was in a lot this week except for Cook and Moore. Gilda was in a handful of things. Jane was in 1 or 2. Lorraine was not around. She was in the Weekend Update.
Weekend Update? Was that it? Yeah.
George Coe was in 2 things.
George Coe was in more things, yeah.
Hey.
George Coe was in more things than Lorraine Newman?
Yeah.
I believe so.
God.
And in as many things as Garrett and Dan.
So if we're doing a George Coe best of, I mean, both of these got to be in it, right?
Well,
Yes. Is it not bizarre that he just shows up all of a sudden, episode 11? Like why now do you do a double down on George Coe all of a sudden? When you had
They
two
realize
hosts.
they realize he doesn't have like maybe the best comedic chops, but he's a serviceable actor, so they still felt compelled to find stuff for him. So apparently this was the best opportunity.
I guess. I mean, there could be. So, Brad, you said this was their third week in a row, but they still have another show next week. So they do 4 in a row here.
They do 4? Oof.
Yeah. Maybe that's part of bringing George Coe in, is like, we're going to need more bodies at some point in this 4-week run to just take the burden off of people. I don't know.
I mean, didn't Dudley Moore and Peter Cook take the load off those guys this week? I mean,
no, totally.
That's what they did.
I know. I'm searching for reasons.
I mean, luckily they were funny. I mean, they were good. Like, I agree with Thomas. It's a good episode. It is funny. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of the comedy comes from the hosts by themselves.
Yeah.
You know who was another good duo on this episode?
Who's that?
Levy and Schiller.
Oh, I meant to bring that up.
I know. As the guards in that Lifers Folly sketch, we got to give a shout out.
And the Levy's in a few times. Isn't he the elevator operator?
No, that's Schiller.
Oh, that's Schiller.
That's Schiller.
And then,
You can't even tell them
Sorry.
apart.
And then Levy's in the operating room. I couldn't tell Schiller without that fake mustache he had in the. All right. Well, it's that time of the show. Thomas, we'll start with you. What's your best bit or best bits?
How many do I get?
As many as you want.
Okay. All right. So the Utah prison one has to be in there because it's a classic Garrett moment. It's a nice showcase for the cast in general.
Yep.
So I think even if it's just for Garrett, I think people need to watch that. That Shepherd interview at the end, just because it's my favorite example of British humor that Peter and Dudley brought to the show. And then the third one would be the Gary Weiss film.
Yeah.
And I was so happy that both of you guys enjoyed that. And Gary Weiss is a little maligned amongst SNL fans for maybe some of his lack of humor. But this, I think, is an example of a good Gary Weiss film. So those would be my 3.
I agree. Brad, what's your best bit?
I've got nothing else to add. No, I agree, Thomas. I've got nothing else to add to that.
Did I just step on your toes? Sorry about that.
No.
No, it's nice. There's consensus.
Yeah.
I agree. I will add the Scred and Gilda, because there was no Land of Gorch preamble before getting to a Muppet and the human. And like I said, it's a twofer. We get Gilda being Gilda, and we get a Muppet sketch. So we knock both. And a B sketch. It's actually a 3-for-1, right? So I'll add that.
That's pretty good for us. Four counts. Not bad for best bits on an episode.
Yeah. Especially when we didn't walk away from this like, oh, this was an amazing episode, right?
I feel like we ended this episode bigger fans than we came in.
Yeah. Well, I think that's because Thomas helped us appreciate some parts of it that you would have just trashed on.
It's because he's British.
And vice versa. Yes, because famously I'm British. So I needed to bring that perspective because we need representation on your podcast. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
I really, I will say anyone who has strong opinions on Gary Weiss should watch this Gary Weiss film, because it was my favorite that we've seen so far. And I think it's probably one of my favorite Gary Weiss films.
It's really good.
You know what? I was reading an old SNL blog that I use for a lot of my research on the SNL Hall of Fame. It's one SNL a day.
Mm-hmm.
Stooge and those people. It's a really great blog. And so I decided, after I watched the episode and wrote my notes, I decided to go see what Stooge thought of this. And he gave it 1 star. He gave the Gary Weiss film 1 star. He was not a fan.
Really?
I saw that.
I
saw that too.
Yeah, so I was like, am I just weird? Am I the outcast? But I guess Stooge just was nothing Gary Weiss could do, apparently, would please Stooge.
Interesting.
So shout out 1 SNL a day. You guys are great.
Yeah. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us this week. This was wonderful.
Yes.
I had a
you.
blast.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.
Yeah. This was great. We'll have you back again. let's tell everyone where they can find you.
Of course, so you can listen to my podcast with Jamie Dew and Matt Ardill. We're the SNL Hall of Fame, and we're actually in the middle of voting right now for the SNL Hall of Fame. So voting is open now until June 19th. So you can go visit snlhof.com to go register and make your voice heard. I also urge you to go back and check out previous episodes of the SNL Hall of Fame. I personally, I'm biased, but I think they're nice 45-minute to an hour snapshots of important people in SNL history. So we do the SNL Hall of Fame concept, but to me, they're just really fun standalone episodes if you're just into SNL history. So go check those out. Brad, you were on a round table talking about your ballot. So this is a little bit of a home and home here. So go check out all the round tables. You'll hear Brad on one of those. And for the next season 4 of the SNL Hall of Fame, I'm going to have to be in touch with you two to see who you might want to be guests for.
I love it. That would be great. We're big fans, and it really is a great show that you can listen through the whole season or go back and just listen to individual episodes, and it's great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you guys are enjoying our show, thank you. But you'll really like SNL Hall of Fame. It's really where we kind of got the inspiration to do the show, honestly, was from listening to you guys and realizing that people like talking about and listening to, the older years of Saturday Night Live. So it's a great show. They have great topics. They talk about, people that you really like in comedy. And I would second Thomas's call to please register to vote, because I feel like, and if you go to the roundtable, you hear it, the show is very recent biased. So a lot of people are voting for people from the 90s and the 2000s, and we need more people that want to vote in people of the likes of Franken and Davis and Jim Downey and the old people of Saturday Night Live. So all of our listeners who enjoy the old season of Saturday Night Live, please check out SNL Hall of Fame, register, and please vote for the old people before they get cut off.
Yeah, indeed. And writers, for some reason, have been underrepresented so far in the SNL Hall of Fame, especially old writers like James Downey and Franken and Davis. So yeah, I think I urge you guys, I second Brad, and go make your voice heard, and let's get some representation for a lot of the old guard and writers in there.
Agreed. So thank you again, Thomas. This was great. I had a blast talking about this with you. Next week, we are going to talk about Season 1, Episode 12 with host Dick Cavett and musical guest Jimmy Cliff. So until then, good night.
Good night.
Have a pleasant
tomorrow.
Wow, thank you. And I got to see you guys do that. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow, like in person. So that was great.